The Orange Sub-Basin Roundtable, if you could please kindly lead your focus to the screens for a video.
Invest in the Orange Sub-Basin. Namibia's Orange Basin is rapidly emerging as a premier oil and gas exploration hotspot. TotalEnergies is progressing towards FID for its Venus project, targeting 150,000 barrels per day, with a decision expected in 2026. Shell plans a 2026 drilling campaign in its PEL 39 license to gather additional data and better delineate existing discoveries, including Graaf, La Rona, and Jonker. The basin boasts estimated offshore reserves of 11 billion barrels of oil and 2.2 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, positioning Namibia as a significant player in southern Africa's energy landscape. The government is modernizing regulatory frameworks and offering attractive fiscal terms to encourage investment. With a remarkable success rate, 88% of wells drilled from 2022 to 2024 encountered hydrocarbons. The Orange Basin presents high-impact opportunities for upstream development and energy exports.
The Orange Sub-Basin Roundtable, proudly sponsored by Yinson Production. The Orange Sub-Basin is one of Africa's most promising offshore exploration frontiers, as you've heard, with recent high-impact discoveries in Namibia by Shell, TotalEnergies, and the Galp drawing strong interest from both major and independent oil and gas players. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've had breakfast this morning. So please help me with your loudest, most enthusiastic applause for our moderator, Research Director, Upstream, Mackenzie, Thom. Joining Ian, please help me welcome to the stage CEO, Rhino Resources, Travis Smithard. Another superstar to the stage is the CEO and member of Board of Directors of Sintana Energy, Robert Bose. An incredible applause for CEO and Director at Oregen, Mason Granger. Please help me welcome Business Development Manager, Africa, Mediterranean, and Middle East, TGS, James Gara. And lastly, we're so excited to invite to the panel Exploration Director, Azule Energy, Giovanni Aquilina. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you. Welcome to our panelists. Thank you for joining us in what I hope is going to be an exciting panel discussion, Invest in Orange Sub-Basin. We've seen in the past 3.5 years, 25 exploration and appraisal wells drilled on the Namibian side of the Orange Basin. And many of the people on the stage have played a very active part in the licensing and the exploration activity. So I'm really confident we've got an excellent panel here to discuss what is really an exciting topic. With Mackenzie, we cover the upstream, the subsurface, and from all of our client inquiries that we have in Africa, for the past 3 years, Namibia has been the top country in terms of questions that we get asked. So I'm delighted to have this discussion. The way we're going to format it is the first half, we're going to focus on the exploration, and then in the second half, we're going to get onto the development. So I'm going to start off by asking our first panelist. So James, so from TGS, if you could give us a bit of a scene setter and get the discussion started. How is the use of basin-wide seismic data assisting in regional studies, and what are the specific geological factors explorers are now focused on mapping and modelling the basin?
Well, first of all, thanks, Ian, and it's great to be here. Good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here on this esteemed panel. So I guess To answer your question, I mean, certainly from TGS perspective, having an integrated basin-wide seismic data library such as we have in TGS allows you to interpret and map depositional systems on a regional scale by placing existing Orange Basin discoveries in their geological context and linking these discoveries to unexplored parts of the basin. Integrated datasets are certainly more robust in terms of AVO correlation, especially when they've been correlated against available well data, which obviously we have in abundance now in Namibia. And this therefore provides more confidence for regional exploration. And of course, we have to look beyond the Orange Basin. It is possible to use our regional datasets to expand the play fairway trend. We can extrapolate the known plays and analogues from the Orange Basin to look for similar depositional features such as basin floor fans, channels and other fan systems as we look further beyond, for example, in the Walvis and Luderitz basins.
Okay, thank you. Robert, I'll come to you next. So, Chief Executive Officer of Sintana, you've built up a portfolio of licensed interests. Can you talk us through what you saw as the investment opportunity in the Namibia Orange Basin and how this has evolved?
Sure, absolutely, and good morning to you all. Let's do the most important thing first. Congratulations to Giovanni and Travis for the most recent discovery. I mean, we're talking about attracting investment to the Orange Basin, and frankly, the best incentive to invest is success. So not only my congratulations, but an appreciation. It helps us all when we have outcomes like that. So that's absolutely fantastic, and thank you to the Energy Chamber. Ian, in terms of your question, it's probably worth taking a bit of a step back and talking a little bit about what our strategy is. Sintana is predicated on deploying what we like to call high impact capital very early that has exposure to very large potential outcomes, creating the opportunity for highly convex returns. And so the way in which we sort of implement that strategy is to look for emerging basins early, look to partner with operators and local partners where we can assist in kind of pre-farm out activities and get involved in licenses where there isn't going to be a significant need for additional capital from us, but the prize is potentially very large. So that is, generally speaking, our strategy. We were able to, quite fortunately, express that in Namibia through a transaction which, as you alluded to, brought us exposure to a number of licenses. And I think what attracted us to Namibia, well, there was a number of things. First and foremost was the accelerating level of activity. We entered into our transaction in October of 2021. By that time, both Shell and Total had arrived in country, had been there for some time. We're working hard on their licenses, which are directly offsetting two of ours. Venus and Graph were events on the horizon, so there was some near-term opportunities for catalysts, for visibility, and hopefully for significant value creation. So first and foremost, there was an emerging level of activity that was being shepherded by people that we thought had sort of the technical sense and abilities to really provide some leadership in the basin. I would say, secondly, as many will know, prior to the announcement of the discovery at Graph, the last commercial discovery in Namibia was the Kudu gas field in 1974. And there had been, activity in fits and starts. HRT drilled a number of wells. They drilled a few wells actually on our Walvis Basin block. But there remained this idea that there was something potentially quite big to do. So we like the idea that there was maybe something big to do, the conjugate basin dynamic providing some of the undercarriage there, but it was very underexplored. So the opportunity to step into a portfolio of licenses was as well very important. I think one of the challenges you can have in this business certainly is overly distilled risk. One license, one partner, one country can make things very challenging. So there was a host of factors, Ian, which gave us interest. And, more than anything, we were just extremely fortunate to have found the partner that we did and to have executed at the time that we did. So that's a bit of the background on how we got there.
Great. Thanks, Robert. So the right time and the right place.
Lucky.
Okay, I'll bring Mason in next. So you've recently taken a position in the Orange Basin and as a new entrant. What's the most significant aspect of the Orange Basin that attracted you to Orange Basin, Namibia?
Yeah, I think it's the size of the prize and the opportunity for smaller companies like Oregen to do a lot of sort of the early stage shoe leather type stuff, elevate the technical understanding of some of these blocks. But there's still quite a bit of like very attractive, highly prospective real estate that's available. And we're fortunate in that, we've got a great local partner in Petrovina, and we've got we've got a commanding sort of presence in Block 2712A, but we're actively working at additional sort of opportunities in the basin. And it's a great time to be in there. There's still a lot of opportunity for a junior player like us to actually build a commanding presence in the basin. So as much as we're a new entrant and we seem like a new company, the reality is two of the very core members of our team have done this before through private company Signet on PEL 39 that ultimately kind of got farmed out to Shell and became that graph discovery sort of in 2022. So it's kind of like, in some respect, it's like getting the band back together. So, our deal guy is the very charismatic Wade Cherwayko that some of you might know, and Stuart Monroe is the VP of Exploration at Signet. And so his, as much as he's had a hand in, dozens of basins around the world, I think, I view his claim to fame as doing the early geological workup, that brought Signet Petroleum and that Shell graph discovery to the forefront in the basin. So we think that, as much as we're a newly created company, not a lot of people have heard of us. The reality is that some of these relationships in country, especially with Petrovina, have been years in the making. And this is kind of our coming out party as a public company. But, we've there's a lot of stuff for us to do in the country. And as I sort of think out kind of 12 to 18 months of the way to structure a company the right way around what's inherently an incredibly risky business, which is offshore exploration and deep water, what we're trying to do is, I think with availability of capital and things, the stars lining up, 12, 18 months from now, we might look like a portfolio of exploration prospects that are all exciting in their own right. And I think that's how you mitigate risk. So, I think in all honesty, we're looking at the success of companies like Sintana and trying to emulate that approach. And I think there's room for other sort of pure players in the basin to try and emulate their success. So, I think in some respects, what I'm trying to say is when I grow up, I want to be just like Rob Bose.
Aspire to greater things.
Great. So we'll bring Travis in next, Chief Executive Officer of Rhino Resources. Been very active in the past 3 years with 3D seismic. You've drilled 3 wells. Yesterday announced the Valance discovery. How does Namibia? What can you share with us with your drilling activities and your exploration results?
I think actually just off the back of these two gentlemen, it's quite interesting to hear, diversify, play risk, get a portfolio of blocks together in the Orange Sub-Basin and Volphus basins. I think we've taken a slightly different approach, which is maybe the more risky of the two, as you allude to. But I think the reason why we can do that, quite frankly, is because if you look at the block position that we have, it really covers the shallow water, the slope, and into the sort of deeper water. And I think that's something we really need to also understand, right? It's not just about diversification of geographic blocks, it's also diversification of play. So I think we've been very fortunate in our block to have picked up some spectrum, now I guess TGS data, the 2D data back in 2016, 17, that obviously allowed us a greater visibility as to what we felt the petroleum system elements of the block could potentially bring in terms of prospectivity. And I think, to be very honest, we've been very fortunate, again, having ultra high net worth players come in and back Rhino in 2021 and allow us that flexibility to, as the CEO of Energean said yesterday, take a risk. And so I think it really is balancing, vision with determination, resilience. and then obviously trying to make sure that you mitigate risk as much as you can. So yeah, we picked up all the 2D seismic data. We had built a reasonably, I think, good understanding of where we thought there was prospectivity. Obviously, shooting the multi-client 3D with Searcher was, if I may say, take my hat off to them, because we gave them a very, very short lead time in which to do that. And Searcher and Shearwater certainly stepped up to the plate. And quite frankly, that allowed us to garner more attention from our shareholders in their own portfolios of capital, right? I think COVID has certainly focused everybody's capital, especially in our industry, to make sure that every dollar has to be a high value dollar. You know, people talk about disadvantaged, advantage barrels. The reality is it's disadvantage versus advantage plays, in my opinion. So, you know, received the 3D seismic volume, had planned on actually going it alone. And then I think I said to our shareholders, that's maybe a bit too much risk. So, you know, not just going on one block, one play, and shooting 2 wells by ourselves. We're obviously looking around, and our major ethos was, how do we bring these particular plays on stream if we have success? So initially, I'd engaged with our friends at ENI. Lorenzo, I see, is in the audience over there, and really sort of tried to partner with like-minded entities. You know, to be honest, a small company like ourselves traditionally, and this is maybe to encourage you chaps, wouldn't be thought of as the operator of deep water wells, drilling not 1 but 3. And I think it's really coming down to collaboration. How do you strategically partner yourselves with service companies like Halliburton for our well services, like Exceed for our drilling? We had Noble initially for the first 2 wells, but now we've got a phenomenal strategic partnership with NOL, and they've actually just drilled the best well that we've drilled out of the 3. So it really is about making sure that you're just high grading not just your portfolio, but high grading your technical ability as a smaller player. And really leveraging the expertise around you. So, yeah, as we mentioned, Sagittarius was a great discovery. You know, we're finding hydrocarbon in every well that we drill. Capricornus was obviously the one that we flow tested, and even Mason remembers the 11,000 barrel a day corrected volume. So I think that's the kind of stuff that really we want to bring to the table, you know, not just for Rhino ourselves, not just for our JV or even Namibia, but to really sort of open up a little bit to the industry. Sometimes there's a bit of mysticism there, and I think that's unhelpful for investment, you know, and obviously we have to be careful as to what we can talk about, but I think, you know, really just making sure that there is an industry focus to coming from exploration into development. You're going to need a concerted effort from all players, large and small.
Yeah, and it's clear that Rhino is an important part of the Namibia exploration story.
Yeah, it's a privilege. Yeah,
three successes. Thank you, Travis. I'll come on now to Giovanni, partner with Azule, partnering with Rhino Resources. You entered Namibia last year, taking a position in the exploration block. Obviously, come with experience in Angola, but also in other places in Africa. How does Namibia exploration compare with Angola or elsewhere in Africa? And can you tell us about how what attracted Azule to Namibia?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So first of all, good morning, everybody. It is an honor to be here in this panel and in front of these distinguished guests and represent Azule Energy. So to reply to your question, let's say Azule Energy entry in Namibia happened, as you said, in 2024. It was a strategic move. It was rooted in both the geological conviction, also thanks to Rhinos, to our partner, and the regional continuity. So let's say our partnership with Rhino was not just a transaction. Travis said it is a truly partnership. It's based on spirit of collaboration and idea exchanged. So what attracted us in the Orange Basin was the conviction, the geological, let me say, somehow continuity with the Angolan deep water system. Not, of course, in terms of ages, but in terms of, let's say, prolific reservoir. So, let's say, and how this has been mirrored, let me say. So this convinced us, this continuity convinced us to apply our exploration workflow. The let me say, the seismic technique, the seismic interpretation technique. I mean, James was mentioning before, and of course the subsurface modeling. So we believe that Namibia offers more than a geological promises. I mean, it offers a strategic momentum. I mean, we have been talking about, you said, some statistic in terms of wells, in terms of seismic coverage, I would say. So, and this has been proved by all the discoveries that we have been seeing. So, proved what our teams have been long-lasting thinking about. So that Namibia is not just prospective, it is productive, it will be productive pretty soon. And all the discovery are, let's say, saying so. So talking about discovery, I believe I'm saying something that you know very well. I'm talking about one of the article that you recently published in the Cretaceous play, and how the exploration was able to untap in the last 10 years in the West Africa more than, let's say, 13 billion of barrel equivalent in place with a rate of success of 50%, which is pretty impressive. And more impressive is the number of, let's say, in place that are in production or are commercial. And I believe we are talking about 7 billion. It's more than another 50%. So all in all, I would say if we compare Namibia to Angola, of course, it offers a different canvas. So Namibia is, Angola is more mature, developed infrastructure, logistic, let me say, regulatory framework, even more skilled labor due to the history, let me say, while Namibia on the other side is less mature but extremely rich of opportunities. So what we believe is that this is not a challenge. It is an invitation for all of us to work together with authorities, with peers, with partners, and build, let's say, ground up all the energy of Namibia. So, and I want to again touch our partnership. So for us, again, was not just a transaction. So we believe that we bring different things in the JV together with our partner Namcor and Chorus. Rhino brings a strong geological and geophysical knowledge. We bring the regional knowledge as well as the let's say very known skills of development, let's say. And on top, we bring some AI solution, thanks also to one of our shareholder, a supercomputer in the industry. So all in all, what we can say is that as a JV, as a L85 JV, we are not just exploring, but we are building the Namibian future.
Yeah, thanks, Giovanni. It's clear from your answer that as an explorer, the Namibia Orange Basin is really exciting. Lots to get after, lots more to come. If you look at, and I think Travis, you touched on it a bit about the corporate landscape. I'm just going to come back to Mason. Can you sort of expand a bit about on how you see that sort of small investor role fits in with the corporate mix in what's we've discussed or perceived to be a play for the majors? What role does Oregen play, and are there any sort of specific niches or play types that are suited to your business model?
Yeah, I think there's an important role for a junior to play in the basin, and you know, I make this point in all the meetings with investors that I do and people that I talk to is like, you know, as a company with our size and staff and number of people and expertise, it's really not our plan to drill $100 million wells, but what we can do, you know, is take that shoe leather approach to kind of on the ground, you know, organizing for the sort of acquisition of interest in various blocks and do some of that early stage technical work, review sort of existing 2D seismic, have a view on the prospectivity of the blocks, and get investors excited about it, to bring capital into the company, and then sort of turn our attention to meeting with guys like James at TGS and doing all the stick handling, to organize for that advanced sort of 3D seismic sort of shoots that will allow us to present kind of a drill ready prospect, so to speak, that's oven baked, as they say, and ready for a super major to drill a well. But as I think kind of the opportunity set for us, if we've done our job well, we'll have laid all that groundwork to meet with prospective majors that can actually invest the capital and drill these expensive wells. And so, this conference is a great opportunity for us to actually sit down with people, introduce the story, introduce the assets, start those discussions going with majors, to the extent that there are sort of new people that we haven't spoken to before like that. But it's a very sort of methodical approach to surface value for shareholders. And as I say, it starts with having the right people in place, the right relationships in country, to be able to affect these transactions to bring prospective assets into the company, and then sitting out and hammering out the terms with seismic providers like TGS, and starting to sort of plan forward to that sort of farm out event. And if we've done our job properly, we'll farm out to a major. There'll be a cash payment, but we'll continue to have economic exposure, through a carried interest, smaller carried interest in the block, so we can ultimately participate, in the upside for exploration success on these blocks. Because the blocks that we are bringing into the company now and actively working on sort of bringing more in, reflect our technical judgment that they are, potentially billion barrel sort of prospects. And so it's great on the back end of this stuff to invite a major in that will actually ultimately risk that capital to drill these wells, and we get to participate alongside them. So that's kind of the business plan.
Yeah, thanks, Mason. I think we can take a few minutes just before we move on to development, just if there's any reflections. I can see James, you going to come back on?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to touch on actually some of the comments that have been raised by Travis, Giovanni, and yourselves. I mean, we certainly believe as a company, partnerships is extremely important, and that's how we go about seismic acquisition, for example, right through from permitting in various jurisdictions in Africa, just reducing that lead time and developing those partnerships at a very early stage. Can drastically shorten the time from first exploration through to first drill, essentially. And that's something that we can offer through, obviously, our multi-client data and proprietary. But that's really a key aspect, I think, in terms of the permitting, working together, reducing that cycle time, and realizing the discoveries that much sooner.
Yeah, I think something in your question to Mason. Can you hear me again? No. Yep. Okay. Which was, I thought, a really insightful question. How does the play fit your portfolio or your business model? And I think there really is a space, and maybe I'm trying to encourage other smaller independent players here, but I really do believe there is a space for the likes of the Chariots of old, the Azinams of old. They were drilling wells for $26, $27 million. Yes, they were very slimline wells, and there was a very I say simple design, well, from a well architecture perspective. But if I look at my team, who are all sitting in that front row over there, we've handpicked people who, quite frankly, we felt have exactly the right skill set in order to achieve a particular outcome in each one of these sub-disciplines. So I'm going to just pick on Andre for a second. Andre starts our exploration manager, ex-CNOC, and various others. A phenomenal QA/QC geophysicist, and in a geophysically led play, was really instrumental in making sure that we brought a team around us that actually allowed us to high grade within our own portfolio, which was the best prospect to go for first. So I think there is obviously space for super majors, some of whom may or may not be cash strapped these days. There's a lot of capital being expended by super majors on very deep water projects. I actually think it's the time for call it the mid-cap independent or the smaller player to look for risk capital, again, within a contextualized risk mitigated environment, to look for the low-hanging fruit. If you look at what BW are doing right now, I take my hat off to them, and obviously the NOL deep sea mirror came from our 1,400 meters and is now drilling in 500 odd meters. The fact is that you can build operational synergies up and down the shelf and into the slope, right? So I think it's really just about, we mentioned earlier, collaboration of the industry, so that everybody understands, where you're trying to get to, how can I help? That really is our function, I believe, as a company, is to be a ligament between players so that we can utilize our capital well, obviously our own business objectives, but then see how they can fit into the broader success. Because as Rob said earlier, Galp success, Shell success, Total success, build success for everybody else. So, a rising tide lifts all boats. So I think, there really does need to be maybe an impetus put on smaller companies to give it a go. Look for play types that you think that you can actually achieve, within a sub $50 million cost per well environment. And quite frankly, if you hit 300-400 million barrel, which I think, I'm not sure, that's not a BW number. That's my own interpretation of what I think they're going for. That could be an absolute game changer, right? So from an ROI perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. So I think I'm just maybe trying to stir the conversation a little bit toward, this doesn't have to be cookie cutter, junior goes in there, then major, then development. I actually think that there's space, obviously play type specific, for everybody at the table, and everybody brings something unique and something different.
I could maybe just add one comment. Sintana is just one of a host of portfolio companies we have at a family office in New York, and we are in the end investors. And I think Travis alluded to it in terms of some of the capital behind Rhino. It's very similar. I think all of this requires spending time with, and originating high-risk capital. It is very difficult to go to the average investor and tell them you want to spend $50 million on a well, which could be dry. There's not a lot of people that are super keen on that. And so I think we have a job to do as a small company constituency in a big industry, which is to market success to the people that can play that role. Because, Travis, as you allude to, gone are the mid-cap explorers, right? There's no Anadarko. There's, business models have evolved, and we found ourselves in this, to some degree, polarized environment. We've got really big companies and then really small companies. And the viability of the small companies and the ability to transition them to being less small companies is, I would offer, in large part, a function of talking about success and originating high-risk capital, which is not easy. But again, success begets interest, and that's where it starts. So we definitely have a job to do.
Yeah. Great. Any other reflections on exploration? No. So I think, to sort of summarize this part of the conversation, it's clear the excitement, the discoveries, the success, it really builds a trend, and the variety of different players in the market, the dynamism there, I think, really speaks to the excitement and the opportunity for the Orange Basin, and plenty more to go for. We've still got 25 minutes, so we're going to move on to look ahead to the development of some of the discoveries and what that might look like. I'm going to come to James just to kick this part of the discussion off, because seismic isn't only for exploration. Given all the technical challenges in parts of the basin, whether it's permeability, etc., how might seismic and imaging techniques address complex structural interpretation and improve chances of recovery and commercial viability?
Yeah, well, thanks, Ian. I mean, certainly as we move from early exploration through to field development, that's complex seismic acquisition is going to become more and more important to realise the commercial success in the Orange Basin. As has been reported from recent discoveries in the Orange Basin, reservoir quality has been variable. For example, the discoveries inboard of the outer high are known to have better reservoir quality in comparison to the more distal discoveries. Many traps in Namibia are also stratigraphic in nature, with subtle dips. Therefore, the need for high quality imaging to de-risk the traps is becoming more and more important, obviously, as we look at trying to define the prospectivity of the Orange Basin. I guess in TGS, I mean, we have a number of advanced 3D and 4D seismic acquisition solutions for hydrocarbon exploration and development. I'd now like to outline a suite of technology that we have in TGS, which is specifically designed for such purposes, which is our GeoStreamer X suite of acquisition solutions. And here we look at different solutions of our advanced true broadband GeoStreamer technology, which have been designed to maximize useful information that we can explore in field development. So I guess looking at a number of different techniques, we've got multiple azimuths or multi-azimuth surveys. These are designed to enhance the illumination that we see, which is typically very reduced, for example, in narrow or limited in narrow azimuth surveys, and these become more and more important as we move through the development cycle. We have streamer and node combination surveys. These are typically used on infrastructure infrastructure lead field development surveys. And a good example of that was our Nordkap Basin project in 2021 that we acquired. We also have techniques such as extended long offset, in which we have a source vessel which is towed ahead of the streamer vessel, and that allows you to gain extremely long offsets, which obviously in more and more in our imaging flows we're looking at inversion techniques and full waveform inversion. So having those long offsets and being able to recover those low frequencies is extremely important for that. We've developed a new source actually, which has been used on a number of new projects with great success now in TGS. Very recently up in Angola for a project that we're actually processing at the moment, and that certainly has applications down in Namibia, which is our extended frequency Gemini source. And again, being able to recover the low frequencies is vital for processes such as inversion, full waveform inversion, which has become integral to our flows. And I guess to finally look at one of the last sort of aspects of our GeoStreamer X suite of technologies, we are able to offer wide toe source and multi toe source solutions. So these are applications in which we're able to extend the width of the source, and indeed increasing beyond the existing dual and triple source that we have, thereby minimizing the near trace offset that we have on the outer cables, but also drastically decreasing the crossline bin spacing that we have. And that provides greater imaging resolution as we look at focusing on field development.
Yeah, indeed. No, thank you. I think I guess to bring together the trend in deep water globally, certainly over sort of 20 plus years, it's had a massive interest. And a part of that is clearly the technology side of it has come along tremendously. The capability and design of FPSO vessels has been a big part of that, which has enabled all of this exploration to happen. So yeah, floating production storage, offloading vessels is really the sort of predominant way that the deep water oil discoveries are being developed. We don't have anybody from TotalEnergies, but they're of course they put together some sort of plans for an FPSO vessel on the Venus discovery. But I want to come to Robert next. So of course, as part of your portfolio of investments in Namibia, you have a small exposure to the Mopane discovery. And we've seen some of the results there and potential for different or multiple production hubs emerging. So yeah, if you can expand, Robert, how does a company like Sintana with a 5% exposure proceed? Is there an obvious exit point? Do you stay for the journey? How does a carry affect this calculation? And basically, what are your options and preferences to realize value?
Sure. A number of different things. I would say, first and foremost, having a significant financial runway in almost every situation is always a good thing. And I would offer in large scale, multi-billion barrel developments, it's even more of a benefit when you've got a kind of a long runway where capital is not required from you to get to some fairly significant finish lines. So we are, very fortunate to be in that position in respect of PEL 83. So that gives us a lot of time. I would offer, in relation to that, that only amplifies the need and the opportunities to be mindful about what business you're in, what risks you want to take, and what kind of returns you're looking for. I would offer that, a small company like Sintana is not the natural owner of a small non-operated piece in a multi-billion-dollar development, even with a long financial runway. There are other people that make sense to own assets like that. And part of our job is not only to originate opportunities that can give rise to these kind of outcomes, but also successfully monetize them. And so, on the one hand, we're very fortunate to not have a gun to our head, as it were, to do anything immediately. But I think that only, as I said, sort of escalates the merits of being mindful of that. So, we are looking at many options. There's a number of different ways to do this. We're very fortunate to have partnerships across a number of licenses with some partners, and so that gives us degrees of freedom in how to think about the portfolio. But this is a convoluted way of saying to Ian, I think the likelihood that we'll stay in this project as it gets to first oil is not high. And so we are continuously assessing opportunities to make that happen in a way which makes sense for the people who would be stepping into those positions, as well as for our shareholders. So that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah. I think it shows the role of M&A, that companies can trade assets, trade positions, is a really important part of the evolution of...
It's hugely critical, and this is where, again, as Travis alluded to, the complete sort of evaporation of that mid-cap market makes this more difficult, because you, to some degree, are reliant on a handful of super majors to take you out at the right time, and they all talk to one another. They all have a pretty common sense of their leverage in a situation, and so that makes these conversations even harder. And when you don't have financial runway, you just have zero leverage, and so that is an absolutely critical part of being able to execute this strategy, is finding that M&A market. But it's something that we would like to see more of and a return to, because it has been missing from the industry for some time.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to come, Travis, to you next. So you're the operator of PEL 85, and that could be a large-scale development. You have a partner with FPSO capability and indirectly FLNG capability. It's not clear how a development might progress. Can you talk us through the next sort of main steps that you envisage, assuming that the discoveries are suitable to move to development stage? So really, what options are you looking at now?
We've got a bit of time I can play, right?
Sure.
Fantastic. So maybe I'm just going to be the contrarian today, because so Rob's talking absolutely from public market standpoint. He's absolutely right. It's very difficult for sort of small equity players to stay in the game. I think where we're trying to challenge the status quo as a company is, and Rob's absolutely correct, we have a very unique set of shareholders behind us, so it gives us a lot of, I guess, degrees of freedom, as you rightly say. But I think our role as a growing independent is to try and sort of challenge the dogmatic mindsets that have been sort of entrenched in development and moving from exploration to development. So James actually hit on what TGS are doing in terms of their approach to seismic delineation in Namibia. These are geophysically led plays, without a doubt. And we are seeing that some are sort of channelized plays, some are sort of fan plays, and the reality is that you have to have a fit for purpose model for each play type. So when you ask the question of this could be a large scale development, yeah, but which one? So we on our block have got 3 different discoveries in different play types. I think the reality is just trying to make sure that as a JV, we have a sensible discussion as to what does the next step look like. Does it look like a full field development on Capricornus? Does it look like a fast track development on Volans? And quite frankly, one has to have the flexibility and mindset. And that's really why we decided to ultimately partner with Azule, because they brought the ENI fast track development approach. But it also is, if I may say, countered or balanced by the BP approach, which is sort of slightly more traditional in its sense of development. So I think it comes down to having the right partnerships, and again, Rob alluded to that, is making sure that you have the ability to be selective. And obviously great assets, you have a bit more degrees of freedom. But I think it all comes down to the mindset, quite frankly. So from a development perspective, Rhino's mindset specifically, and again, we are half of our JV, and we have to make sure there is always alignment, not because that's required, but because actually that's in our DNA, and I believe it's in, as Giovanni said, in Azule's DNA, is, if we continue to drill up these discoveries, there are potentially more barrels to be found. Some discoveries may give you greater insight into other plays, which may be more or less attractive for a fast track development approach. That was actually one of the reasons why initially we had Sagittarius and Valance on the books as the first two wells. After the Sagittarius discovery, and I want to just commend the JV partnership, including our friends Corey's over there, Tashi, I see you, along with Namcor. The fact that the JV got around the idea of, hey, let's pivot in a week from drilling Valance, where we had a drill permit, we knew exactly what we were going to do, knew the depth of the target, and then come down to Capricornus. And I just want to say well done to my Namibian team and to my COO, Gilles, for really pushing the envelope, and the Namibian government being pragmatic enough to be able to organize a drilling permit on a brand new target in the space of a week. So what I'm trying to highlight here is simply, if you have the determination to make the right decision for the right reason, I think that's when you can really start to open up the envelope on development. So yes, absolutely, we brought on Azule directly, ENI indirectly, then BP came along as well, on the basis that we wanted to have flexibility as to, do we go FPSO here? Do we have an FLNG option? And I think, quite frankly, just to take my hat off to the service companies, the FPSO providers, the FLNG providers, everybody's sort of recognizing that it's a new dawn for energy. I think we really have to challenge the mantras of old and say, how do we become more agile? How do we become more deliberate in our pre-investments on the basis that we believe in oil and gas being a commodity for the future? And I don't want to get into politics of energy transition versus addition, but as a company, we firmly believe that Africa needs energy addition. You can't transition from 0 to 0, right? You have to build the energy. So yeah, I think a long way of basically just touching on development is simply, we want to keep an open mind. We want to make sure that we develop the right prospect for the right reason, using the right technology, and making sure that you have alignment in strategic thinking long term is the key to a successful development. So we're very happy to have our JV as it's currently structured.
Yeah. So I think what he's saying is you've kind of got all of the options still that you're still evaluating: more exploration and appraisal, fast track, or larger scale development. It's all still under consideration.
I can't speak to any one of those.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Travis. I'll bring in Giovanni. So Azule, it's got a lot of experience in developments. So big FPSO projects, and we just saw a Gogo FPSO start up in Angola just in the summer. We see, not just in your block in Namibia, but across all the discoveries in Namibia, we see potential for several big FPSO projects, whether it's Venus, Mopane, or some of the PEL 85 blocks. Can you outline what you see as some of the challenges that Namibia might face as it looks to develop major oil and gas discoveries?
Yeah, Jan, luckily you are talking about multi-billion discoveries. Of course, it's massive numbers, but the massive numbers brings also some challenges. And as part of the PEL 85 JV, we are bringing our experience, we are bringing our help, not only to the JV, but I would say to Namibia in general. I would summarize in the challenges in 5 main, more or less. So for sure the technical complexity. So here we are talking about ultra deep water reservoir, at least 1,500 meters. So of course, to develop this kind of reservoir, you need to have an advanced subsea system, a dynamic reservoir management. We are dealing with high-reach, let's say, IGR discoveries or low GR discoveries. So you need to be flexible somehow, and therefore also a solid, robust flow assurance system, I would say. So you mentioned Agogo. Agogo, it's is a testament of our capability. It's not only fast. I mean, I don't want to repeat what my colleague have been said during these 2 days of conference, but it's also innovative. It's innovative in terms of pilot project, in terms of carbon capture sequestration, and also, of course, zero flaring and low emission. Is a full electric FPSO. So we are committed to bring and to upholding this technology in Namibia as well. So to have an efficient development, but also an environmentally responsible development. So this is the first challenge. As a second challenge, I would see the infrastructure development. So as we speak, Namibia is working to expand, to extend also yards or to rebuild yards supply base. So it's a good headache to have because you are not ready to have, let's say, a logistic support for a multi-billion let's say development. But as Azule again, we have done in Namibia, sorry, in Angola with this multi-basin system, logistic system. So we are ready to support, to bring also our experience in Namibia. Then the gas, another challenge. So the gas treatment. So you mentioned we are running 5 FPSO, but also we are doing the first non-associated gas project in Angola. So where we have drilled the first ever drill gas exploration well, luckily successful. The NGC project will have the first will be completed by end of November, and we'll have the first gas between end of the year and beginning of next. So for us, the gas is not a challenge, is an asset, is an opportunity that bring, let's say, value to the overall project. Then I would say the local skills. So this is another challenge, the local content. So in Agogo, to make an example, we have more than 80% of local employee, and during the construction phase, we have an important local content and local suppliers in the Angolan basis. This is not just a statistic. So what we want to say is a strategy. It's a strategy that we want to mimic also and mirror in Namibia to bound our, let's say, the way we work and to bring, let's say, to upskill the labor workforce, training, the job creation, and of course to have some sustainable development involving and strengthening our relation with the local territories. Then I would say the environment. Environmental standards are paramount, I believe, and not only in Namibia, but everywhere in the world. So the preservation of the pristine Namibian water and environment is fundamental for us. So we, as we have done in Angola with Agogo, but also with our project, we want to apply our low carbon operation, the zero flaring policy, and of course, as I mentioned before, also this CCS, let's say, system to develop and to build the economy. So again, we want to support Namibia in achieving the transition goal, of course, by applying the decarbonized solution, not only in the operation or in development, but also in the exploration, I would say. And of course, again, to support the diversity of the economy.
Thanks, Giovanni. I think if you look at the magnitude of investment activity in exploration, with about 25 wells drilled, probably somewhere between 1.5 and $2 billion spent on all exploration activities. But when we talk about development, depending on the size and the complexity of these projects, one project could easily be somewhere between $5 and $10 billion. So it really is an order of magnitude, sort of stepping up, going from exploration phase to development. And you touched on the points like the local labour force, the infrastructure that is not there in the way it is in places like Nigeria, Angola, elsewhere in West Africa. We've got just a couple of minutes, so just invite if anybody's got any sort of reflections before we wrap up, any sort of additional points.
Yeah, I think just on the point around infrastructure, and Giovanni's actually absolutely spot on. Namibia has a large road ahead of it, in order to be ready for developments. But I also think, the local skills that are already in country, we shouldn't discount that. I think Namibians are used to heavy industry. They already have a lot of mining materials and a lot of ore going out of a number of these ports. And so I think it's really just about making sure that there's an emphasis maybe on education for what do oil and gas companies require for development, but also how do you harness the latent potential in that country. I think if you look at what the Namibian government have done, pulling the petroleum unit under the presidency, I think it shows a very deliberate decision on them to say, look, we want to take this seriously. This is strategic for our country. And so it's really up to us as industry to try and guide, help, and facilitate where required the skills transfer, the knowledge transfer, and even some of the engineering expertise, such that we can build a skills base. Obviously, Agogo, 80%, I think you said, of the employees are Angolan, but that's because EPE and I have been in the country for the last couple of decades, right? So I think we need to just be able to be in a position where we are, bringing in outside help today, so that we can hit that strategic vision of 80, 85, maybe 90% in the decades to come. Namibia is a small population, so I think there is there's a lot that we can do as an industry to empower folks today, such that in the generations to come, there is actually a successful skills base that can take the industry forward.
I would just add, excuse me, one point to that. I think we can open the aperture up a little bit further in terms of ensuring sort of the multi-generational benefits inure to all Namibians. One of the things that we have done is look to put interest in licenses into community foundations, so providing direct exposure to the ultimate outcomes of these projects into the hands of the local community. So I think it's more than just ensuring they can create the businesses that can react to the opportunities, but as well as sort of sharing directly with the Namibian people the opportunities that the licenses bring from a long-term investment perspective.
Great, thank you. We are at time, so I would like to thank all my panelists for what's been an insightful discussion on Namibia Orange Basin, unpacking the exploration and development story. So a round of applause, please.